Hooray, a leopard. David, do you see it? It's over there. The universe hath smiled upon me twice in a row. Now I think, if I was to guess, I would say that that was young Vutomi. Megan May Nelson has just sent me a message. She said, "Staying with you and the leopard." Thank you, Megan May. I think that's a very good idea. I think that's young Vutomi. Anybody like to disagree or agree with me? Let's go a little bit forward. Maybe his mum's close by. His mum is Inkanyeni. One day I will get over the excitement of of spotting a leopard, and I'll be able to do it in a calm and collected fashion, as opposed to like a small child who has just been told he can have some ice cream, which I'd quite like, as well as some pie. Hello, young fellow. I wonder if you wouldn't mind lying on a slightly more attractive piece of ground. Would that be possible at all? I don't see his mother anywhere. Do you, David? No. Now, Sandy, you're wondering how we're able to identify leopards. Sandy, it's normally, well, there are a number of different ways that you can do it. And some of our viewers use some ways, and I use other ways, and some use the same as me, and some don't. My initial thought here was this is a small leopard in the territory that we know to be his mother's, and so I just assumed Vutomi. And the best way, of course, is to identify some kind of spot pattern that, of course, doesn't change throughout their lives, and you can figure it out from that. The most classic one, of course, was Karula, and she has or had, depending on whether she is or is not extant anymore, a wow written across the front of her forehead. That was very obvious to see. Now, with this chap, I would look, for me, it's easiest to look above the whisker line, and there you can see if we go, can we possibly, sorry Dave, go into the whisker line there? Is that all we got? There you've got a big spot and two small spots, and the two on the left almost meld with each other, so he's a 3 spot on his right, our left, and on the other side I think he's also 3 if I'm not mistaken, or 2, he might even be 2, I think he's 3-3. So this would be a 3-3 young male, and just from the pattern of the spots above the whisker line, that's how I would tell best. You can do it from the necklace that they have underneath. If you lifted his head up, you can see there's a unique sort of necklace underneath the throat, that's quite good. And then, I mean, there are various other sort of patterns that I suppose you might be able to identify. Ali, you're wondering if he's any relation to Karula. I think he's a very, very distant cousin, because his mother is not closely related to Karula at all. But, oh, hang on, his father is probably Inkanyeni, and Inkanyeni is offspring of Karula, which therefore means that he's actually Karula's grandson. Megan, the comms are working. You may hold forth on the radio as opposed to the telephone now. I wonder where his mum is and why he's lying. You know, he's almost independent, this fellow. Now, I believe that you're all... I've just had a comment that you're all excited to see a new leopard. Do we think this is a new leopard? That this is not Vutomi? Let me just check a second. Let me check. I will be able to answer this question for you shortly. I'm sure There are a number of you rolling your eyes right now thinking, come on, surely you know this by now. No, not so much. I have a close-up, however, of Vutomi. That is almost certainly Vutomi, yes, that's him. Lane, you say, do I think that this young leopard is acting normal? Probably because he's lying out here in the open like this. Yes, I think he's acting completely normally. I think this is a completely normal sort of thing for him to be doing. He's cold and he's probably waiting for his mum to bring him something to eat, or he's trying to see if he couldn't perhaps catch something to eat himself. Except that isn't a male leopard, is it, David? That didn't look like it had any kind of sort of designated tackle behind the tail. Now, we may lose comms again here, Megs. Surely this must be Vutomi. Now, Vaping Raven, I'm afraid... Vaping Raven, what a Twitter handle you've had. I'm afraid I missed that question because we did lose comms briefly. Go again with it, please, Megsy. Oh, how can you tell their age? Vaping Raven, only from their size, I'm afraid. And from knowing them. This chap is very cold, clearly. He looks to be about, I don't know, about the same age as Hosanna Odd. Maybe I think he's supposed to be a little bit older, actually. So he's probably about 17 months old. If it's who I think it is. I'm still getting no feedback as to if people agree with me or not. Ah, good. I'm glad you all agree with me that it is Vutomi. And Vutomi, of course, means, David? Life. Vutomi. It's a nice name. I was prattling on the other day about how I didn't think that leopards should be named for, so many female animals are called beautiful or some synonym like that, not cinnamon, and males synonyms for large or powerful or strong. And then I realized that most of the leopards out here are quite the opposite. They're actually got really nice names, like Vutomi. His mother's name is Inkanyeni, which means she who brings the light to the world, or something thereabouts. Tandi, the loved one. Tamba, the rock. Yes, I don't know that this leopard's going to do a great deal any more today, but we're going to sit with him anyway. Vic, you say, is Vutomi a male or a female? Well, Vutomi is supposed to be a male. And I say supposed to be because when he lifted his tail, I didn't see what I should have seen, but that's just because of the angle he was standing, I'm sure. I haven't got that wrong, have I, David? Vutomi is definitely a male. His father, Shivambalana, well, that's who we think his father is only 6 or so. That's quite young for a territorial male, and he hasn't been seen here for a long time. I think he's moved largely into the Kruger Park. And there is some debate as to whether or not his mother may have produced another litter of cubs already. And so he's not often with her anymore. And the last time, in fact, the first time I met him, he and his mother were being set upon by 3 wild dogs, and they were up 2 different trees. But they managed to escape unscathed. Lucky for them. You'd think he'd be prepared to do something more than just lie there, wouldn't you, David? Just because we are on morning game drive, of course. It's quite cold. He's obviously not very hungry. Mac, you say how low a temperature can a young leopard handle. I think you'd be surprised at how low they can go. Mac, there are parts of Russia, of course, where you find the Amur leopard, all 50 of them left in the world, where it will drop to -15 on a fairly regular basis. So they can cope with extremely low temperatures. Parts of, I imagine, India up towards the Himalaya, where it can get well below 0. Here, of course, it doesn't drop too much below sort of 4 degrees ever, and they manage okay with that. But in parts of South Africa, it'll drop well below 0. And certainly traditionally you would have found leopards in those areas, some parts of the Karoo, some parts of the Southern Cape, where it will go down to, well, -5 or 6 every so often. And they'll cope okay with those sorts of conditions up in the Drakensberg Mountains, likewise. That is very cold. In fact, I start to shiver when I think about it. All right, we're going to wait here and see what he does. I might just have a little foray around to see if I can find his mum. In the meantime, Tristan apparently is about to have a bath. That is spectacular, isn't it? Well, from a very quiet morning to magnificent leopard and great wild dogs. Vutomi has managed to get up and come back to where we originally found him. And he's just looking around. He stood up and we could see he was very skinny, I must say. So I think he's quite hungry. Doesn't look like he's in bad condition, but he could certainly use a meal. And so I suspect that he's around this waterhole for much the same reason as Shongile has been concentrating on waterholes. Terrapins seem to be the food of choice for young leopards who are not quite competent at hunting bigger prime venison cuts. He's very nicely camouflaged there. And especially in dim light like this, and in amongst those stones, he really is quite well hidden. I'm very lucky that we saw him. Oh, I haven't called us in on the radio. I suppose I should probably call that in, shouldn't I? Station is located. Young male leopard at buff pan on the dam wall. Animal is static. It'll probably result in a massive explosion on the radio, except unfortunately for them I can't hear them. If you'd like to make your way here, please do so. But I won't be able to copy you until you're at least as close as Kalkul. Yes, I called you in. I think he's a very good-looking leopard. Everybody keeps saying that, though, you know, and I've yet to hear anybody say, I think this is a particularly ugly-looking leopard. I have heard people say that about 1 or 2 of our characters. I'm not going to say who they are because that will result in Twitter exploding. But he is a very good-looking fellow. He's perfectly in proportion. Definitely not nearly as stocky as Hosanna. In fact, I would say Hosanna is, although being 3 months his junior, is probably bigger. Certainly stockier. But you can see his head is just fuller than Shongile's, for example. I wonder what Tristan's going to find, given that, you know, he had so much luck yesterday, and we've got dogs and we've got dogs and leopards here. I'm sure he is probably about to bump into, well, what could it be? Possibly lions, tigers. He's a very special little fellow. And obviously Monday morning for him is no different from Sunday evening, which of course in turn is no different from Thursday. And so while this feels very much beginning of the week to me for some reason, because we've been so conditioned into it, for him this is just another cool day. Waiting for his mum, wondering if she'll bring him something or if he's going to have to hunt it himself. Gary, you're wondering if leopards and lions cross paths. The answer is yes, and you say if they do they respect each other? Absolutely not. They don't respect each other in the slightest. Well, leopards respect lions in so much as they're terrified of them, but they certainly don't respect each other from the point of view of, you know, we're all in this together, and although I don't like you particularly, you know, I respect you as my foe and enemy. No. Lions will kill leopards at the drop of a hat. If they can get hold of them, they will kill them. And the reason this chap is lying out in the open and not too worried about lions right now is probably largely the fact that he knows lions are mobile most of the time at night. And so when it comes to the daytime like this, he's relatively safe. It's not warming up at all today, I must say, so he's going to be fairly chilly here on his own. I think every so often he gets too cold and he goes down, lies below the dam wall, and then he realizes that he's not going to catch anything lying down below the dam wall. And so then he comes back up here to see if he can't spot something that he might be able to catch. Not so, young fellow. Yes, exactly. I just think it's also quite remarkable how well hidden he is when we're zoomed out. I'm not sure what he's hoping to try and catch there. If I were him, I would get in amongst the bushes close by and just lie there. Then I could be warm. I could just lift my head. I'd be in cover. I could just lift my head every so often to check what had come down. But right now, he's going to really struggle to push home any attack from where he is. Priscilla, a nice one from you. I've mentioned that perhaps his mother has given birth again. There's certainly some talk of that being the case. And you say, what would happen were he to meet his new siblings? Young leopard like this would not damage young siblings. They'd be absolutely fine with each other. He probably wouldn't be affectionate with them, but he'd leave them alone. Okay, let's head back across to Taylor. Her wild dogs are back in view.